Oliver's life was made up of a series of fundamental elements: work, money, career. However, he believed that none of this held true value without the presence of love, the ingredient that gave meaning to everything else. This was the epiphany Oliver had on the day he decided to dedicate himself to what really mattered. For years, he thought he was destined for solitude, setting himself apart from the rest of the world, until he met someone who completely changed his perspective and inspired him to pursue dreams he had never imagined before. Oliver's journey was not easy. Coming from a humble family, he had to fight hard to achieve his dream of becoming a doctor. Since childhood, he proclaimed that he would be a doctor, a statement met with skepticism by many, as no one in his family had even earned a diploma. But Oliver never lost faith and tirelessly dedicated himself to his goal. He studied 10 times harder than other students to pass the entrance exam, and not only was he accepted, but he also received a scholarship that covered all university costs. The path was long and filled with obstacles, and he often thought about giving up due to the numerous difficulties faced. However, he persisted, overcame each challenge, and became the first in his family to attend college and moreover in medicine. When he began practicing medicine, Oliver lived an exhausting routine. He worked from morning until night, including weekends and holidays. His time was completely absorbed by work, so that he never had a serious relationship. For him, life was reduced to the cycle between the hospital and his home. He dreamed of having his own office to enjoy a more peaceful routine. After a few years, he finally realized this dream by opening his own clinic, modest, but exactly what he wanted. Over time, the business thrived, and the time came when Oliver needed to hire a secretary. After interviewing several candidates without finding one that fit, it was time for the last candidate, named Margaret. However, she arrived almost an hour late for the interview, which initially caused great irritation in Oliver. Oliver was about to leave, almost giving up on that last interview of the day, when Margaret arrived, running and panting. It may sound like an exaggeration, but something extraordinary happened the moment he saw her. Oliver fell in love instantly. It was love at first sight, something he had never experienced before. During the interview, he could barely hide his enchantment. "Dr. Oliver, I'm sorry, the bus broke down and I couldn't catch another one. I'm truly sorry. Look, I really need this job more than you can imagine. I'm willing to negotiate salary, schedule, whatever is necessary, but I really need this opportunity," pleaded Margaret, showing her desperation. "I understand your situation," responded Oliver, with a measured voice. "I've interviewed many people today, and I need some time to reflect on everything. Do you have any idea when you might be able to give a response?" "I'm quite anxious," asked Margaret, hope shining in her eyes. "As soon as possible. I really can't manage everything here on my own, it's been very difficult. There's too much work for an unorganized man like me," said Oliver. "I'll be hoping then. I promise that if you hire me, I will organize everything around here," Margaret assured him, hopeful. Oliver, internally, had already decided to hire her. Something inside him said she was the right person. The next day, he could hardly wait to give her the news. When he called and announced that the job was hers, Margaret reacted with little squeals of joy over the phone, extremely happy. On her first day at work, Oliver realized how competent and dedicated Margaret was. She shared a bit about her life, revealing that she lived with her 5-year-old son and husband, supporting the family on her own since her mother was very ill and her husband had been unemployed for a long time. Although disheartened to learn that she was married, Oliver couldn't help but admire her even more. Margaret was not only competent but also fun and hardworking, completely transforming the work routine. She organized everything, even Oliver's life, adding a feminine touch that was much appreciated by the patients. Truth be told, Oliver found himself falling for her more deeply with each passing day, although he never confessed his feelings. Oliver knew he should not get involved with his secretary, Margaret. It was a complicated idea, but he noticed that she also looked at him differently. It might have been just his imagination, but the doubt persisted. One day, he was invited to give a lecture at his old university and asked Margaret to accompany him to organize his materials. That was the first time they spent several hours together outside of work, and Oliver felt nervous, like a teenager beside her. On the way back, when dropping Margaret off at her house, the tension reached its peak. Dr. Oliver, thank you so much for the ride. See you tomorrow, said Margaret, about to say goodbye. Wait, Margaret. I need to say something before you leave. I really don't know how to say this or if I should, but I know exactly what you mean and I want you to know that I feel the same. However, it's my job, you know? With this money, I support my son, so I can't risk it. It's a strange situation for me too, but something tells me it's with you, because you are different, pleaded Margaret, already very close to him. At that moment, it was impossible to resist, and their first kiss happened. Oliver knew of the complications, but after that kiss, everything changed rapidly. They no longer wanted to hide their feelings. Oliver was completely in love with her, in a way he had never imagined possible, and although Margaret was married, he felt the affection was mutual. The days at work also became days of intense passion. Whenever there were no patients or between consultations, Oliver and Margaret were together. These were unforgettable moments for him, experiences he had never had with another woman. It might seem inappropriate to some, but he insisted it was true love. He loved Margaret deeply, but unfortunately, although she said she also loved him, she did not want to separate from her husband. Their relationship continued, dragging on for months, until one day Margaret revealed that she was pregnant. You're crazy, Oliver, it can't be. Of course, this child isn't yours. I'm just telling you so that you know. You have the right to know, said Margaret, nervously. I know it very well could be mine. You know that too. We've been together here in this office for months, replied Oliver, with a mix of hope and despair. They had never protected themselves, and Margaret insisted the child was her husband's. This child is my husband's, understand? Stop being crazy, she scolded Oliver. But Oliver, stubborn, saw the pregnancy as the opportunity they needed to finally be together. Look here, listen. This is the chance we needed to be together once and for all. It was everything we needed. It's you who can't see, he argued, but Margaret was decisive. I am married and will never leave him. Stop deluding yourself, Oliver. This revelation was a harsh blow for Oliver, who truly believed in the authenticity of his relationship with Margaret. Margaret, I don't even know what to say, but what if this child is mine? At the very least, we have to do a test, a DNA test, he proposed. However, Margaret threatened, if you keep insisting on this, I will report you. I'll say I suffered abuse at work, that you harassed me, that you forced me to be with you, threatening to fire me if I didn't do what you wanted. What are you talking about? Oliver said, perplexed. You know this could cause a lot of problems for you, right? Do you really want to risk your career like this? Oliver, forget about it, okay? This child is my husband's and that's final, said Margaret. Oliver was stunned by what he heard. He couldn't believe it. They had been together for almost a year. He loved Margaret deeply, so much that he didn't want to harm her in any way, but he was also terrified of the possibility that she might carry out her threat and how much it could damage his career. Oliver had fought so hard to get to where he was. How far would Margaret go to protect her marriage? Despite everything, Oliver liked her so much that, even after this conversation, he allowed her to continue working for him. After all, she was the breadwinner of her house, and honestly, he didn't want to part from her. During the pregnancy, Oliver took care of Margaret. He ensured she had prenatal care with the best doctors he knew, care she could never have afforded given her living conditions. He gave money, bought gifts for the baby, did everything he could and even what he couldn't to support her. Deep down, Oliver hoped that Margaret would love him for everything he did for her, but he began to suspect that maybe the love only existed in his own heart. To Margaret, he might just be a means to an end. She liked being with him, but Oliver feared she was more interested in his money than in him. In true love, it seemed she only had eyes for her husband, a man Oliver considered lazy and dependent. He wasn't sure and asked not to be judged, for he knew those who go through this understand how difficult it is. Love made him submit to many situations, some even humiliating. When Margaret's son was born, Oliver was convinced the boy was his spitting image. He has my eyes, my nose, even my chin, Oliver claimed. But when he suggested a DNA test again, Margaret threatened him, telling him to forget the matter or she would leave him forever. She knew that was Oliver's biggest fear. The fear of losing Margaret was more terrifying for Oliver than the idea of losing everything he had built in his career. "It's serious, I swear." "Unfortunately, it's the truth," Oliver confided, resolved to remain silent. He couldn't imagine his life without her and continued to love Margaret, choosing to accept her demands to at least stay close. Oliver cherished every moment he could witness the boy's growth, whom he considered his son. "He's my son, I'm telling you." Sometimes, Margaret brought the boy to the office, and Oliver felt a deep connection with him, as if it were something otherworldly. He dreamed of the day Margaret would decide to stay with him for good. "I live for this, I live for these small moments we still have together and for the hope of one day holding her in my arms for good." For this woman, Oliver would do everything, endure everything, even seeing another man called father by his son, because deep down, he was absolutely certain that the boy was his.